안녕하세요. Welcome back again. Last 2 weeks we studied about shamanism. In this, the category of Korean thoughts and religion, I basically select 3 major religions or religious traditions. We started with shamanism. Today, we'll start the second topic, which is Buddhism. It's a formidable task, almost impossible to talk about Buddhism in 10 minutes or study Buddhism just through the lecture notes I gave you. Again, like any other topics we studied up to this point in this semester, again, this is just introduction. So there are still a lot of gaps to be filled. There are questions I'm sure you have for further clarifications. And also, there could be more advanced discussions on a certain topics just barely introduced in this course. So given the limit, we'll just spend this week studying the basic history or basic teachings of Buddhism or special unique characteristics of Korean Buddhism compared to other Buddhist tradition in East Asia. Okay, let's open up our slides. So we begin with an interesting question here. Is South Korea a Christian country? What does that mean? Well, if you visit ever, I'm sure some of Korean students who's taking this class are very familiar with this visual image, especially at night. If you see this red cross, neon lighted red cross church steeples. It's all over like the stars in the sky. So you might get impression, wow, there are so many churches. So that means this is nation of Christianity. The answer is no. There are a lot of churchy steeples that grabs your attention, but there are more Koreans who call themselves Buddhist than the Koreans who call themselves Christians. So now there are major, the group, again, these actual numbers or statistics varies from one report to another, but you will find out in the lecture notes. But there are the major religious tradition. And like us, Buddhism has been a part of Korean life much longer than Christianity has. So this is recent imported religion. But Buddhism is such a long history, especially if you visit the mountain areas in Korea. I mean, almost every mountain there is at least one Buddhist temple. The one statistic shows there are estimated more than 3,000 temples, small and large, exist in Korea. So that's the very evidence of this influence Buddhism. And also in this contemporary culture, there's a Buddhist way of thought still continues in the expression like life is a sea of pain. In Korean, people say 인생은 고해라. So these are just very usual expressions can be heard among Koreans, but again, this has to do with the very notion of a Buddhist idea. Okay. So at the end of this session, we'll be able to understand the teachings of Buddhism, on what Buddhism is all about, and also the Sun, the Korean Zen tradition, is another highlights in this session. So, I mean, there's no way for me to nicely or clearly summarize the teachings of Buddha, but I try to get you very simple essence of Buddhist teaching like this. So, the historical figure, Sakyamuni, and he began asking question, why we have to suffer? We're getting old, get sick, and no one can escape our death. So this sadness, this sufferings? Where does this come from? What's the meaning of this? And virtually how we can deal with these sufferings. So this is what he found out. Our desires are our downfalls. More you desire, more you suffer. This is basic mechanisms, how the minds work. So as Buddha saw it, so human beings were doomed to be born, suffer, die, and then be born again to repeat that whole cycle once more. This is a very famous term for this. In Korean, it's called yunhue. It's a cycle, circle of this endless circle of life and pain. So to break away from this endless circle of birth, death, and rebirth, he believed he found a way. He thinks desire for pleasure itself cause a problem, unhappiness. So if you can eliminate their desires, there'll be no sufferings. As simple as that. But how you can eliminate the desire, that's not just conceptual questions, it's existential questions. So here's the question again. People spend eternity alternating between pain and pleasure. We talked about this yunhue sasang, this endless circle of birth and rebirth, and his answer: you have to stop taking life and this material world too seriously. This is not actually real world. It's a maya. It's image, because nothing is real, because it's always changing. If something is always changing, that can be real. If that's the case, why did we take this unreal thing as real? So that's simply misunderstanding. So you should be enlightened to get the truth out of this. So we are in kind of in the darkness or in our dreams. So our desire kind of make us blind to see what's really happening. Instead, because of various karma and misunderstanding or illusion, we think this is real, but that's not the case. So ultimately the world is not real. Again, we are trying to summarize or highlight some of Buddha's awakening here. So by real, the Buddha meant unchanging and unchangeable. Thus, the pleasure and pain, they are all equally unreal and of no real consequences. So, if you have that realization, we might not suffer as much. Oh, this is something will go away soon. So, again, this is not just conceptual understanding. There's something has to do with the very experience or very specific the methods, they call it the meditation. Through the meditation, you attain this wisdom, the eye of wisdom. Again, we'll talk about that in a bit. And also, I emphasize also here, we talk about kind of the Buddhist teaching. But if you study the Korean Buddhism, there's differences and uniqueness can be found because there is a time differences. So when the Buddha taught these ideas, and when it actually arrived in Korean Peninsula, it took centuries. So in the given time, people have their own interpretation and different questions and different answers. And so again, there is a historical factor plays in Korean Buddhism. So there are much was added in the later centuries. Sun. I like to, if I write in Chinese character, it looks like this. Both is Chinese character. If I read it in Chinese, it sounds like Chan. Sorry if I'm not perfect. In Korean, it reads Sun, same Chinese character. In Japanese, it sounds like Zen. I think a lot of you, most of you are familiar with the term Zen. It's because this idea of this sun or meditational tradition became known to Western world through Japanese literature or Japanese teachers in the first place. So this very term Zen, widely known even today, but again, this same idea originated from a previous time through China, Korea, and Japan. They might have developed a different Zen tradition. And this is something we have to understand in the beginning. And so what about the Korean Sun tradition? So the meditative sect of Korean Buddhism. So how can you be enlightened? It's not just you just learn from words or solve, understand, the mathematics. It's not like that. There are different paths you have to follow. And there's a specific method called meditation. And again, this tradition called Seonjong in Korean, it's virtually imported from the influence of Chinese Chen meditative sect. So a lot of the leaders of Seonjong who are students of Chinese teachers in previous centuries. So that's how we trace this tradition of Korean Sun in Korean Buddhism. So that's the mainstream of Korean Buddhism. So if you visit almost every Buddhist temple in Korea, you can find this place called Seonbang, meditation room. So there are a lot of duties and functions that the monks have to fulfill, but the utmost things they have to do is, no wonder, to be enlightened through meditation. And this meditation room is a very important part of Korean Buddhism here. So the practice of Korean Buddhist temples can be divided into three traditions: Kyo, Yul, and Sun meditation. I'm not going to explain further in these concepts because you will find out in the lecture notes. So attainment of enlightenment. It's not you solve the question. It's attainment of enlightenment. And that's the very way to reach the Buddhahood. So that's interesting tradition. And the Sun lineage attempts to achieve Buddha mind transcending letters or words. So it's quite well known. Some Buddhist monks they are never allowed to speak a word for some years. So because they believe these words or knowledge won't lead you to this enlightenment. So with such a focus, very meditative, continuing every day, every moment, pay attention to your own inner minds, observing what's happening. Finally, they realize where those old desires come from. So again, this is very the core of Zen tradition. And this is interesting concept here. This message can be conveyed only from mind to minds. So of course, we read about Buddhist teaching, and also the monks themselves, they read sutra, but they are supposed to go beyond, because it's not just words they believe in, something beyond. So words, teachings, they are just bridges. So you have to go over the bridge and enter this realm of Buddha land or Buddha mind. So this is very important and emphasized tradition, very strong mainstream, only found in Korean Buddhism called Seonjong tradition. So Christianity is ever growing. There are more churches built every day, but certainly the Buddhism has been a very important part of Korean traditional religious tradition, and like there's so many temples in the mountain area, and also this very unique Sun tradition. Certainly we have to study Buddhism as a part of Korean culture in general. And again, I already emphasized the Buddhism in Korea. And another interesting fact that is, Buddhism was first introduced to Korea like top to bottom fashion, not from the people and then becoming the major religion. In the case of Buddhism, the ruling elites, the royal culture, they adopt Buddhism first and then spread down to the people in Korea. Okay, so we spent just 1 week to study Buddhism. I hope you can find further literature or other interesting concepts of Buddhism in your future studies. Thank you.